Welcome to
The Cleaning,
a podcast about Apple TV Plus's new show, Silo. My name's Bubba, and with me, as always, is someone who they asked to unfriend friends of the Silos. It's Qatfish. Qatfish, how you doing?
Bubba, I'm doing great. Always happy to be joined by someone who, like Juliette, keeps getting reminded they're horrible at their job.
Oh boy, I know it. Hey, everybody, welcome to our Silo podcast. Today we're talking about Season 1, Episode 5, The Halfway Point, an episode entitled The Janitor's Boy. Sims appoints Billings as chief deputy to keep tabs on Juliette, whose effort to solve 2 murders leads to a showdown. Dun, dun, dun.
Showdown.
Qatfish, before we even give our rating of this particular episode, I wanted to go big picture.
Okay.
We're at the halfway point of Season 1. The show seems to be doing well. This came from Deadline, the Deadline.com, the Hollywood reporting site, which says Silo debuted as the #1 drama in the history of Apple TV Plus, according to the Nielsen Premier Weekend Dating, and its viewership has grown by double digits since. How do you feel at the halfway point of Silo?
Well, Bubba, maybe this is just me. And I know we're always making Game of Thrones references, and it's bad, but I'm going to do it here again. Game of Thrones starts out with a long scene that shows us who the real big bad is. The real big bad is whatever is coming out of the north.
Oh. Yes, of course.
The Starks.
Right.
And then that kind of gets forgotten for a long time. And you're like, well, okay, all this stuff is going on, but have we forgotten about the big bad? And I feel like maybe I'm wrong or not, but they set up this whole thing about the outside. There's a mystery about the outside, right? And partly because of things you've talked about, because they explain a little bit more in the books and they're not saving it, I still feel like the mystery of the outside is still hanging over our head. Justfully or justfully not, they're not going back to that. That was kind of the focus of the first 2 episodes. So I feel like the world is being fleshed out a little bit more, but also that we're forgetting about the outside. Another way we're forgetting about the outside? Seems like recently a whole bunch of people saw a different thing on the outside. There's no talk about that.
No.
I'm a little concerned about where things are going. I'm still interested in this world, and in general, I like this episode better than the last one. I still like this world. I like the people in it, but I'm still all in. What about you, Bubba?
It is very tough the way this show begins, where it kind of makes the first episode about Allison. And then Allison definitely you don't imagine is going to show up in any more episodes. And then Holston is kind of the co-focus maybe of episode 1 and co-focus of episode 2. And again, based on the way the show is, they're not around. The mayor gets an awful lot of time in the first 3 episodes. She's not around. Marnes is also a good part of the first 4 episodes. Now he's not around. So I do think that makes it tough.
Those, by the way, were all characters that I liked a lot more than the character that seems like is going to stick around here, Juliette.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Bernard, but sure. Okay. But the big thing is that this show, for the viewers, it feels like they are hooked and that they can take an episode like this where we forget about maybe the big picture mystery and we just see, is our heroine, our kind of prickly heroine in Juliette, is she going to jump this hurdle that's been placed in front of her? And in this episode, she does. So I think we're at the halfway point. But if you want to be a successful show, these next 5 episodes, they got to pick up steam and steam and steam and steam and steam. And so you could do some slow burn stuff. But generally, I think you at a certain point do have to pick up steam to get to that final episode. And I kind of hope it does that. So that's mine, a kind of halfway review. Listeners, what do you think? We always love to say, who cares what we think? We want to know what you think. How are you feeling about this episode and about the halfway point? How did they let us know what they think, Qatfish?
Bubba, there are a variety. There's more ways they can let us know than there are floors in the silo.
Wow.
You can hit us up at facebook.com/doublephq. You can subscribe. You can join our Facebook group at the Double PHQ. You can subscribe and leave comments on YouTube. You can leave reviews on Apple Plus, on Apple Podcasts. If you're listening to iHeartRadio on us, you can shout out, "I love you guys," and we'll hear that. You can also hit us up on Twitter at DoublePHQ, Instagram on DoublePHQ. That already I've given more reasons than there are floors.
Obviously. And Qatfish, it's funny you mentioned that because we're lucky enough to get some kind reviews on Apple Podcasts last week. And listeners, we are generally an audio podcast. You can even listen to on YouTube Music, I believe. We love reviews. And one of the reviews, which we'll cover them both in a bit, but one of the reviews said, "This is the best Silo podcast."
Heck yeah.
That made me feel so good. We are trying to be a great podcast. Listeners, if you have ideas of ways we can make this podcast even better, let us know. But I did think one thing about our podcast is as good a job as I hope we're doing is that our good buddies over at Daily DVR, Axel and Andy, they don't cover Silo regularly, but they talked about it at the end of the show, a bit at the end of their podcast about Succession. And the one thing that they can do that Qatfish, you don't do too much of because, and I don't do at all.
You say something smart?
No, we have both read the books. Now, conveniently, you've forgotten the books, so you can come up with theories. But because Axel and Andy had not read the books at all, they came up with some wild, the earth is flat type theories. And I thought, oh man, we might need to invite some complete non-book readers on so we can have some of these fun, crazy things. I also want to say, if you listen to some of the other great Silo podcasts like Wool Shift Dust, we want to have Alicia on. She's a great host. Mike Bloom, a great host at post-show recaps. We may have to have them on so we can make our podcast even better. And if you,
oh my God,
listeners,
you know what would make our podcast even better is if when we had Andy and Axel, we also had Kyrie Irving.
Oh man, oh man, you're going deep on these guts, Qatfish. That's pretty good. Okay, we've held out too long. What is your rating for season 1, episode 5, The Janitor's Boy?
Well, Bubba, I am going to give this 8.2 double A's out of 10.
Wait, double A's?
Yeah, that is something when you got some delicious fruits around and you don't give them the respect they deserve. That is what I like to call apple abandonment. Oh. One bite of the apple, then throw it away. They got just food to throw away there. The show's kind of did a slow burn. I thought last week was a super slow burn. We had a lot of different things happen this week, gave us some pieces. We finally met the head of what I like to call extrajudicial. So we had some movement in that part. We got some mysteries solved as far as who was killed. But Bubba, the biggest mystery of this show, you're talking, people are talking about what happens outside, who did this, who did that. The biggest mystery, I'm so happy they did it, but they spoiled the biggest mystery of this entire show has been solved in episode 5. And that is, how come there are no elevators? Finally, we know the answer to that. It is in the pact. For some reason, and we'll talk about it later, for some reason, elevators are not allowed. We found out a lot of interesting stuff here. We had some good action. And also, usually sometimes I give demerits because of the crazy talk that I'm just tired of, the down below, all that kind of stuff, you uppers, whatever that stuff. Yeah. Bubba, there was none of those today. Greasetown is acceptable. That's acceptable as a sort of calling something kind of a slum. Down Deep was a retread. So that's not really a demerit, although we did get it twice. So, okay, 0.5 demerit. So it's going to get 7.7 double A's, apple abandonment out of 10. So that's what I think, Bubba. Wow. What is your rating of this episode 5, The Janitor's, who you calling, boy?
Let me tell you something. You focused on food, so did I. I'm going to give this 7 double H's out of 10.
Double H's?
Well, that's, excuse me, it's triple H's.
It's triple H's?
Hank hijacks hush-puppies. I love a good hush puppy. And Deputy Hank, I don't care if you walked 150 flights of stairs. Give me my damn hush puppies. Even though we've read the book, in the main body of our podcast, we don't spoil anything. And we kind of don't even tangentially talk about the books. But but first and foremost, I'm going to say I'm going to give this 7 out of 10. But I do have to be completely honest in, say, tangentially about the books. This episode was almost completely brand new. Really, for all intents and purposes, this is 100% new. None of this is actually in the books.
Oh.
And listeners, if you don't consider that a spoiler, I guess it's a book spoiler, but if you don't consider that a spoiler, we always have a book talk at the end of our podcast. And sometimes it's, very light spoilers, but this week, we're not going to have any what I would call spoilers about the rest of the story. We'll talk about how the book compares to the show based on what they've done so far, but we're not going to have any spoilers about future story points or twists or mysteries you might have in the book talk section today. So hopefully you guys will be able to stick around and hear it, because some of it's interesting. We're also going to talk about changes they've made from the book, which I think are smart, which are good adaptation choices. We're also going to lay out why you might want to read the book and why you may not want to read the book if you are a non-book reader. And I think it'll be fun. And so I know that we say goodbye to listeners a lot of times early, but if you're okay with that kind of note, like, hey, nothing in this episode was in the book, we're going to have a book talk section that's about that spoiler level at the end of this podcast. Now, because of some things I really love. 7 is not a great score, but some things I really loved. I loved watching Juliette outsmart Judicial and their attempts to, pretty much pin Marnes's murder on some poor sap. I love that. I love seeing Juliette be smart. I love that moment of it. Now, there are other things that knock it down a bit. So, okay, we figured out this guy killed Marnes, most likely killed the mayor. We raised the question of, well, why would he do it? The judge says, listen, we've got peace. Don't bother looking into it. And for me, it's like, Juliette, that's good enough for you to just say, oh, okay, sure. You're so obsessed in George's murder that you don't kind of want to see this investigation through to the end. Moments like that, which I don't think worked for me. That's why I only went 7 out of 10. But again, a lot of good stuff in this episode.
Tell us what you thought about the episode. Give us your ratings. Include the doubles. Some people hate it. Some people love it.
Oh, yeah.
Give us your double rating for the episode. And obviously, as you can see at the end of this podcast, we're going to read all our listeners' reviews and, in fact, and comments. And so, in fact, if you're looking for the best and most incisive commentary, you can skip right to the end when our listeners are the ones who make the reviews. But, of course, Bubba, what our listeners don't do, even though they're giving the most intelligent advice, what our listeners don't do is live participate in the games. They can always participate in the games later. So now, before we go into the podcast, to remind the listeners not to skip to the end, we're going to play our first game. And again, you can answer, but later on, you can't answer now because by the time you hear this, it'll already have been taped. So we have our judicial debate. And Bubba, our first judicial debate is, we've got the funeral for Marnes and the mayor together. Yeah. Why not? Let's not waste 2 apples on 2 people. Let's waste 1 apple on 2 people per person. 1 per person, 1 apple per person. So, Bubba, our first judicial debate, there were 2 eulogies given at this funeral. They were both really bad. Both just horrible eulogies. But, Bubba, who was worse? Mayor Pro Tem Bernard?
Oh, boy.
Or double S, sucky Sheriff Juliette?
Qatfish, it's not often when we have a debate where there's no wrong answer. So, which of these eulogies...
I disagree, Bubba.
Which of these eulogies for the mayor and Deputy Marnes is the worst? Juliette should have said, Marnes's only wish was me, the person he didn't like, wouldn't speak at his funeral. And so I guess it got a bit heartfelt, but I think it's the worst. I think Bernard, I've told a lot of jokes that bomb. And so I'm going to give Bernard the small feat forgiveness of his joke that bombed. So I think Sheriff Juliette's eulogy was the worst. How about you?
Well, Bubba, spoiler alert, I'm going to completely agree with you. But since I detailed my reasons, I'm going to list them out very carefully. Let's go through the notes that I took on these as I was grieving the mayor and Marnes. The things that stuck out into my head. Okay. First of all, Bernard does do a good job adding and multiplying. Now, it makes no sense what he's doing, but he does it.
At funerals, the phrase Nobody told me there'd be math involved. Comes up never, except at this funeral.
But Bubba, there are two things you never do at a funeral.
Let's hear them.
Okay? Explaining idioms like filling her shoes. And the other bad thing you never do is describe someone with a word and then tell people what the dictionary definition of that word is. Okay? The fact that he didn't do the dictionary thing is his only saving grace. But you can't do much worse.
Okay, good.
Juliette did much worse.
Oh, no.
Between her opening, Marnes thought I sucked, and her follow-up, I don't want this job, there was no, that was it. That was pretty much her whole thing. I think the only people who would have liked her eulogy better are people who hate long eulogies or even short eulogies. Plus, Bernard got 1.3 pity laughs for his joke. So you're right, but I'm righter because I gave good points. Juliette's eulogy was worse.
Qatfish, we're pretty good at this. We should stop reviewing TV shows and just review eulogies for the rest of our time here on YouTube.
But Bubba,
podcast. Yeah.
Speaking of worse,
it's
game 2 that we always do better or worse based on evidence that we see in this episode, only episode 5. Are the people in the silo, do they have it better than we do today or worse, Bubba?
I'll let you go first. I went first last time and had the right pick, but apparently not descriptive enough. So well, what is it, better or worse, Qatfish? Yeah.
I'm going to say we have it better today.
Ooh.
Because in conversations with Juliette, Sandy indicates that she's got all the power, a.k.a. Sandy is the deep state. Now, Bubba?
Yeah.
We don't actually have a deep state, so we have it better today.
Right, they're not functioning. Nowadays, I go in, I order my burrito at Chipotle, and I have to say, "Oh, can I have this burrito?" They give me the burrito. "Oh, thank you." "Oh, I have to go here." "Oh, thank you." I'm always thanking people so much.
Yeah.
But it's better to live in the silo where someone can save your life when you're hanging on by a thread and pull you up to safety. And as Juliette showed us, you never have to say thank you in the silo. It is better living in the future where I don't have to give praise to everybody else. Better
Bubba,
there.
Once again, I'm going to tell you, even though we agree, my reasoning is better. Simply because no matter whether Juliette lived in the silo or here, it's clear the word thank you would never come out of her mouth.
Oh, no.
Juliette double J, Juliette the jerk. All right, Bubba, now that we've played our games, let's do our infamous episode recap, where we recap the episode and add little giggles to it.
Hopefully giggles, that's for sure. Listeners, we want you to join in on your thoughts on the episode. You are a part of this podcast with us at WPHQ, Twitter and Instagram, YouTube. Give us those comments. We love them.
Let's hear it.
Qatfish, we were both a bit tough on episode 4 and about how it was slow and didn't move the plot forward. One thing I thought was the previously on recap at the beginning of this episode, it was under a minute and it pretty much gave you all the pertinent information from episode 4. Didn't have a flashback, but it got it got you there.
I think they were worried about this episode being slow, Bubba, because I don't know if you noticed, but the opening credits didn't happen until about 15 minutes into the episode.
Yeah, it was real awkward. It was like, we forgot to put these in. Just a minute.
Why not?
Now, Qatfish, this episode begins exactly where episode 4 ends. She has the file. This was the big reveal at the end of last week, the big cliffhanger. Ooh, what's in George's file? Well, maybe nothing. To me, it doesn't even look like George's file. It looks like a file about Allison, where they interviewed people after Allison's cleaning, and they went and interviewed George. They interviewed crazy conspiracy lady Gloria. Marnes apparently interviewed George. He's asked him about the relic, a.k.a. the wristwatch that we know so much about that Juliette was told not to wear by Holston. George, in this report, says he was alone and he didn't have anybody. What do you think about that, George being alone?
He said he was alone about 4 different times, and the camera showed it about 8 different times.
Is he protecting Juliette by saying that, or is Juliette thinking maybe that's how George really felt? How do you see it?
Yeah, I think he was protecting Juliette, but also maybe considering Juliette's personality, maybe it was just kind of his wish. Maybe he's like,
Terrible.
if I keep writing, I'm alone. Maybe I'll be left alone.
Man, oh man, terrible. Terrible. So we have one cliffhanger. Ooh, here's George's file. It doesn't seem to reveal anything to us yet.
This is our typical thing that happens, Bubba. Is at the end of every episode, something gets revealed. And at the beginning of the next episode, we find out, oh, we still don't know anything about it.
Well, yeah, how about this? It's Juliette's at the end of the rope over the water. In the next episode, she'll climb back up the rope. Juliette finds George's file in the next episode. Looks
doesn't really have anything in it.
Whatever.
Yep.
But hey, last week we also had the cliffhanger. Someone's got a shotgun pointed at Marnes. A porter knocks on Juliette's door, and we find out
Marnes, he gone.
Why am I only 7 out of 10 in an episode that really did have a lot of good stuff in it? To me, this is the most anticlimactic death ever. Marnes has been a big part of this show. His death should have been, once again, a gut punch. It should have been an episode ender to let you know, oh, no, this silo is deadly and dangerous, man. Instead, it's like, oh, hey, welcome. You've been gone for a week. Guess what? Marnes is dead. I was very frustrated by that.
You expected him to get more death fanfare than the mayor? I mean, this is the way everybody goes.
Equal death fanfare to the mayor.
But this is how a guest star goes. Okay, I mean, I don't know. What did you want? A party? You want weeping women? You want a New Orleans second line to come on through?
If one of your main character goes, it has to have some weight. For me, the way it was revealed, I called it anticlimactic. That's how I felt. It didn't have much weight. Did you? Now, admittedly, you have been predicting this. On the very first episode, you said, how come Will Patton, the actor who plays Marnes, is listed as a guest star? And I kept my mouth shut. I tried to at least get you off that scent as best I could. But are you not shocked because you predicted it? Or do you think this really has some weight that Marnes is R.I.P.?
I'm joking. I agree with you that once again, it feels like we set somebody up and they sort of are kind of unceremoniously dumped. Not dumped, but that their passing has less emotional heft because it kind of gets really kind of skipped over. It's like, yep, he gone.
And it's a new world, literally.
Yeah.
Juliette steps into this crime scene. Sims, Judicial's already there. The head of IT / the interim mayor is there. And then we meet Paul Billings, the infamous Paul Billings, who we've been hearing about for a while. And Juliette calls this out. It's not that Marnes is dead. It's that his body is not gold. And here's his replacement. Meet the new chief deputy, same as the old chief deputy. Whoa. I mean, his skull got bashed in by his own shotgun. Youch.
Listen, here's the thing. I mean, let's say Billings didn't probably know Marnes. So it's not so surprising that he's a little bit more clinical. And if you want someone to look like they have human emotions and feelings, what you need to do is contrast them with the way Bernard reacts to everything. So Bernard comes in and he is all broken up. And by all broken up, I mean he has the same expression on his face that he seems to have all the time. He's just chagrin. He lives in a kind of a permanent state of chagrin. And there he is. If you see it on YouTube, he reminded me of the many moods of Darth Vader, where every mood he has, he looks exactly the same.
Terrible. Bernard is, I keep calling Juliette prickly and Bernard prickly. Maybe everybody on this show is prickly. Sims is prickly. He's blaming Juliette. If you had put somebody outside his door, maybe he wouldn't be dead. Now, by the end of the episode, you're like, because you wouldn't have killed him, Sims. But very awkward. Bernard, I guess because he's now in a political office, he's really got to be political. We've got to come up with a PR message. And so he's like, let's get to my office. Juliette, she wants to do as much investigating as I guess somebody without any experience can. And she's trying to figure out what's happening. She searches Marnes' pocket and she comes up with that list that Judicial gave Marnes about, hey, these are the people who may have wanted to kill the mayor.
If there's really one thing that's really sad about Marne's death,
Yeah.
is that he was only able to punch some of those people on that list before he died.
And then Juliette notes, okay, that painting or the drawing he had done of Mayor Johns is off the wall. So she does pick up some clues, but, you know, I'm not a detective, but I'm watching this scene going, okay, if I wasn't a detective, how would you want to solve it? Well, he's not the only person living on this floor of the silo. He must have neighbors who maybe heard something, maybe somebody walking, a porter who might have seen something. But Juliette, she's not a cop, and she's so new, and she's surrounded by people who she probably shouldn't trust. She goes to Bernard's office and is really silent for most of this next scene, Qatfish. Bernard, he may not love the job. He always talks about, I can't wait to get out of this job. But maybe it's because he's like, when I get out of the job, there won't be any liquor left.
I know. Well, it turns out, you know, we thought he might have been pulling a power play trying to get the mayor's job. I mean, he killed the mayor. It turns out it wasn't about power. It was just about alcohol, Bubba.
Right. What it was he saw the brandy he gave, that Mayor Johns gave him, and he's like, she's got a lot of liquor? Okay, I want to be mayor. Now, Sims, he's kind of the new character who really gets a focus. He's had minor focuses, little focuses in these other episodes, but he's really getting a focus here. And even Sims plays a bit political. He's like, hey, why don't we have this be the official party line? 2 olds walk the silo. They died. Ask your doctor if walking the silo is right for you. I mean, that's pretty good.
But Bernard grabs onto a whole story. They were in love. It's beautiful. Yes. And what I love about it is the story that Bernard spins is absolutely true. And so, you know, they say alcohol is bad for you, but Bernard, he's quite intuitive when he's on the hooch.
Now, Paul Billings, we've been hearing about him for weeks. This is our first look at him. You know, you're finding out why people want him to be sheriff, because he's like, if they were in a relationship, it wasn't sanctioned. The pact, always go by the pact. Sims, you know, everybody's, instead of solving what happened, they want to come up with a response. Sims is like, well, maybe the judge could give a forgiveness holiday. You're seeing a little political pushing. You know, we'd heard from Bernard earlier about, hey, mayor, if you're trying to fight judicial, don't get me in the middle of this territorial contest. And now that Bernard's mayor, you kind of see Bernard's like, hey, let's have a race. Sims, no, let's have a forgiveness holiday. And it really is kind of petty squabbling.
There were 2 things when I thought of with forgiveness holiday.
Okay.
The first one was, could I get a forgiveness holiday from you?
Never.
And the second one is, when you think of forgiveness holiday, the only thing I can think of is The Purge. You know, it sounds like that's what he's kind of saying, that people need to let off steam and we need to allow them to do that. And so forgiveness holiday is just a big old fun free-for-all punch-up.
Well, hey, Mayor Bernard's answer is kind of the same. Blow off steam by having a race in Mayor John's honor. And Sims is like, you know, the mayor didn't actually like these races. She thought people would get out of hand.
Right, but Bernard is like, AKA, I don't give a... I mean, the booze is really loosening Bernard up.
He really needs to get some in Juliette so these 2 can, you know, have some fun scenes together, huh? Me watching this scene, I've already pointed it out. I know Juliette is the newbie, but she is sheriff. Why isn't she talking in this scene? It's a bit awkward.
I don't know. They don't know about the forgiveness holiday, the other stuff like that. I mean, the one thing that is made clear by the end of this episode, and is a little surprising to me, is that Juliette has been charged to enforce laws that she has no idea what they are. She hasn't read the pact yet. And I'm actually kind of surprised that the pact isn't something that was taught to
in
everyone.
Schools,
yeah, that everyone knows the pact. And maybe most people do know the pact, and Juliette just decided, I'm just going to be in here with my nuts, bolts, and grease, and so I'm not going to do it. But
well, Qatfish, just to prove your point, recite the U.S. Constitution to us.
We the people.
Okay.
And liberty and justice for all.
In order to form a more perfect union. All right. One thing, listeners, why, well, you know, I've talked about some reasons why I'm down on the episode. Let's talk about something. If you've listened to our podcast any length of time, you know I love ice cold disses. I wrote this one out from Sims. It's kind of long, but I love it. Sims to Juliette. You're the reason I stopped by to see Marnes last night. I said to him we should make Paul sheriff now. Marnes said to wait, not because he thought you'd succeed. He figured you would realize you were in over your head and slink back down to Greasetown on your own. Oh, slink back down to Greasetown. Ice cold, Sims. You're getting a point from me. You may be a terrible, tyrant killer, but I love ice cold disses. That's pretty cold.
But first of all, we could call this the Sims of podcasts. Sims is the hero we all need. Another thing is, now I know that radios are illegal.
Right, if you're not a cop or somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. But there must be some sort of communication system going through this silo, because word has gone out. If you see Juliette, make sure to tell her she's completely unfit for her job. That is, you know what? They just made an amendment. The 275th Amendment to the PAC says, criticize Juliette for how bad a sheriff she is.
Qatfish, that is ice cold on your point. Now, Sims, at this point in the episode, we don't know the reveals we're going to get later, but at this part of the episode, Sims is acting like he's really upset about Marnes' death. So what did you think at this point when you saw this guy, who we later realized probably is upset about Marnes' death, maybe because it didn't go as cleanly as he wanted? But what did you think at this point when Sims seems very frustrated that Deputy Marnes is R.I.P.?
I thought this was good acting, because I thought, well, maybe there was something between them, kind of earned respect. And maybe there was, but it's clear that Sims was the one who used a patsy to get him killed. The only other possibility is that Common wants to keep working, and he knows that Will Patton is the real power in Hollywood. You want to get on any show, ask Will Patton. He's got connections.
Bernard is the one who tells Sims, hey, that's enough, shut it. And so is it odd to see Bernard defending Juliette, the person who he's told to her face, I didn't support you to be mayor? Is Bernard coming around? What do you think about this turn in the story?
I think still what I thought before is that Bernard is going to try to cozy up as much as he can possibly unthaw his personality. He's going to try to unthaw it so he can use Juliette, get him on his side.
Well, I think that's a great point, Qatfish. And he's trying to educate the new sheriff. He's telling her, listen, if you read the PAC, and she hadn't really read it, he says, start with a section on your department. It doesn't explicitly say the sheriff should kiss Judicial's ass, but it pretty much is the subtext on every page.
Oh, my God. I wanted Juliette to respond, we don't do subtext in Greasetown.
That's funny, but she kind of didn't need to. We know Juliette doesn't do subtext.
It's funny because, one thing that could be frustrating for people, and it feels like, again, when you talk about it, it would be nice for things to be a little bit clearer so we could understand the consequences. I'm still not quite sure what the balance of power here is.
It isn't defined. And maybe the showrunners want us to be in Juliette's shoes because she hasn't read the PAC. She doesn't know. Maybe they want us to be in that same place because we are as viewers. That's exactly right.
It would be more helpful to know what the stakes are, to know how. I mean, maybe if they explain the stakes, it wouldn't make any sense that Juliette could be installed as sheriff, because really it seems that if Judicial had any power at all, they would have been able to stop this.
Well, that is a wonderful point. Now, let's go to the funeral. Put on your Sunday dark clothes, your Sunday best. Pull out your tuba. And they're being buried together in an apple farm. We've already joked about it, but Bernard, who keeps saying, I'm just temporary mayor, once I'm done with this, I can get back to my numbers, which I love. This is a bit of a political job. If you're at a state funeral for the mayor and a deputy, you've got to, not everybody can hear you. This doesn't seem to be broadcast everywhere like the mayor's Freedom's Day speech was. But
it was really nice for the beloved mayor and deputy to have 26 people show up at the service.
Yeah, that was odd, but it also felt like there was a line. Like not everybody could be around when the words were said, but there was a long line to, hey, everybody gets to bite an apple and then drop it in tribute to these fallen leaders.
Apples, so many apples wasted.
Well, yeah, you say that. Do you think anybody just not, does toss an apple in, but also maybe some trash? They're
I just wonder if on the menu and in the down low, there's going to be a lot of apple mash in the next week.
What if in like 2 years you bite an apple and you're like, boy, this apple has a lot of liquor in it. It reminds me of Marnes. Juliette is on her own in a lot of ways, but she does have a power team, and most of those power teams are in the down deep. But hey, Deputy Hank, he's up top. He came up for the
double D.
Wait, double D?
No, A double D.
A double D.
Adam Driver double.
Oh, Qatfish! I saw the funniest thing online. So you keep thinking that Deputy Hank looks like Adam Driver. Somebody online said, "Oh, here he is. This character I call Silo Ren."
Oh man,
that's pretty good,
huh? Oh, it kills me. See that? People are so much smarter than we are. Silo Ren.
Pretty good, huh? Now, let's talk about this, though. Once again, Juliette, somebody who comes across as such a loner, she does have people. Admittedly, they're all down in the down deep. But Deputy Hank, unless the show is really pulling a fast one on us, he seems like he's on the good guy team. Don't you like him?
Oh, and he is Mr. Pep Talk.
He is Mr. Pep Talk. Another negative, even though I like Juliette having kind of her crew, her posse in some ways, is we keep being told, hey, we can't talk about this murder because people panic. People panic. The silo's on edge. But we've never really seen that, right? Like, to you, have you watched a lot of scenes and thought, oh, this silo this population's in a powder keg and could blow up at any time? They're telling, they're not showing.
No, this is a good reminder that it's been an episode and a half since we've had any idea there was still trouble.
Yeah.
Though we suspected that since there was an uprising near revolt over the sheriff going, that it hasn't been somehow calmed down by the mayor and the deputy dying. Then we have the credits. Thank you.
The end. Oh, no, this is the opening credits.
Opening credits.
Juliette is in her office. I want to point out, with the door open. We were told last week that Holston was always left his door open. An angry Secretary Sandy comes in, and as many characters on this show likes to do, she provides a previously on recap for Juliette.
But not before her spilling her space on the bingo card that says, call the new sheriff unqualified.
Bingo! Yes, that's a space. Okay.
And then Sandy reminds her that she is the deep state. You want staples, you want paper, you want any action, that's me.
Right. But Sandy, while she doesn't like Juliette, and that I don't know if that's a bingo card thing either, she keeps saying it, she does at least give Juliette the real dirt, right? She's like, listen, Judge Meadows, she doesn't care about the truth or what happened. She wants order. If the truth is going to destroy order, don't tell the truth. She says Marnes wouldn't have cared if you personally solved his murder or not, but he wouldn't want some poor bastard being sent out to clean who doesn't deserve it. And so I thought that's a nice thing that Sandy says.
Sure. But beating the crap out of people who don't deserve it is just a part of his friendly deputy duties, right? Marnes, he's got a line somewhere. It's a solid blue line.
Yeah, hey. Juliette has this mission. Do something, make sure an innocent person doesn't take the rap for this murder. And yet she's given the judicial, what we would assume is the judicial mouthpiece. Yeah. He's like, take him with you because he's read the pack and he'll make sure you don't do anything against the law. The first bit of policing is she has her list that she pulled out of Marnes' pockets. That goes to this guy, Charles Martin. Charles, once again, he knows what's going on. What do you say?
Hey, he says, don't tell me he died naturally. As loose as he was with his fists, I'm sure somebody got revenge on him.
Dang. Now, Juliette is not a cop, but even she's like, okay, Marnes was beaten up and attacked. This old coot wasn't going to do it. And he had like shaky hands. And I believe she calls this, hey, he couldn't have killed Marnes. He had the syndrome. I believe they call it the syndrome. Listeners, this hopefully isn't a spoiler, but before the show started, the showrunners, Graham Yost and them, they were talking about how they wanted to create like a physical trait for somebody who's really having a bad problem with being trapped in this silo, claustrophobic all the time. And so this handshake, I believe, is supposed to represent when somebody in the silo is just getting the claustrophobic heebie-jeebies because they live in an unnatural state. Juliette, after this encounter with this suspect, who wasn't really a suspect, I guess, she gets rid of Paul Billings. Now, I want to pause right here, Qatfish. We've heard this name's Paul Billings. You know who'd be good for sheriff is Paul Billings. You know, I ran the numbers. Paul Billings would be great.
Paul Billings is the guy.
We've heard about him for a bit. Did he live up to the hype? What do you think of him? Can you trust him, or is he a judicial plant? What are your thoughts?
The first thing I thought was, he does seem harmless enough and genuine. So I thought, obviously, he must have killed Marnes. Turns out I was wrong. Now, he's younger than I thought. Okay. But I guess it makes sense because you want someone who's going to be there for a while. But then, Bubba, later on, I saw the head of judicial, and I thought, she's younger than I thought. And then I realized, Bubba, I'm just old, and everyone is younger than everyone in a position of power and authority is younger than me, except for Joe Biden. Joe Biden, barely older than me. What I want to know is, Bubba, what was Billings doing before, right? Everyone's always shadowing somebody. He's old enough to have been shadowing somebody before. So was he he seems kind of mild and meek. Was he shadowing a librarian, or was he shadowing Sims? Tell me who he was shadowing before, and I'll tell you whether he's a good guy or a bad guy.
Ooh, well, Qatfish, I think the only clues the show has provided so far is when his first name was brought up, somebody said, oh, Paul Billings. He used to be a deputy in the mids, but he left being a deputy to go work for judicial. So that, to me, seems to be the only thing we know about him so far. In this episode, by this point, the real thing he seems to be is a stickler for the pack. Oh, well, the pack says this.
And now, I don't know if you want to talk about how we feel about him later in the episode now.
No, let's hold off. Let's hold off.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so now Juliette got rid of Paul. She goes to Patrick Kennedy's place, and she has not read the pack. She has not read any rules. She is breaking and entering.
Okay, hold on, Bubba. I don't know about the pact. But she hung out with Marnes enough to learn a little bit about what Marnes used to call double P.
Double P.
Yeah, proper policing.
No, brother.
You talk about the pact, but just, there's a lot of things we still don't know about the silo. But one thing I'm guessing is that the term unlawful search and seizure is not in the pact. So I don't really know why she's sneaking in. I guess Judicial would just go ahead. I really don't think, it really doesn't seem like this kind of place where cops can't just bust in.
Now, I want to say, once again, I've talked about things I liked, things I didn't like. The way this whole story plays out, I love. She's going into this apartment. She does think it's Patrick Kennedy's apartment. In his closet, which has a dress, and of course I thought, wait a minute, you're supposed to recycle your dead wife's clothes. But anyway, in this closet, she finds rat poison, and she finds this picture, the infamous picture of Mayor Johns. And I love the way this plays out. And you're like, well, is she a good detective because she can find clues? Or is she, at this point, did you realize this whole thing was a plant? What did you think?
I thought if she didn't realize these are obvious plants, then she is definitely not police material. Because all that is missing is a note that says, I killed Marnes with rat poison, Juliette. Come get me.
You know what? Yeah. A lot of criminals want to confess.
Yeah. That's all that it needed. And I thought, if she's really buying this, she's not just not friendly. She's not good.
Okay, so we follow Paul Billings. Juliette sent him away. He didn't go home for lunch. He heads to Judicial. And the way the scene is staged is you can see he can hear something through a door. And he's kind of taking his time to get up to the door or knock on it because he wants to listen. Inside that door, it turns out to be Rob Sims' office. He's talking to a potential shadow, Doug Trumbull, a.k.a. the person who, in a very quick shot last week, we saw was in Marnes' apartment with a shotgun. Now, Paul, the way it's presented is Paul says he's not a fan of this Doug Trumbull character. And Sims implies, no, he wants to shadow me, but I'm just humoring him. Any thoughts on this?
This did make me think that this did slightly revise my opinion of Trumbull. I already had a good opinion of him, but I'm like, I'm not Trumbull. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Billings.
Okay.
Because he's like, oh, that Trumbull is trouble right here in the silo. And that rhymes with a P, which stands for a pool we don't have, which which stands for Trumbull. Trumbull, trouble. The other thing is, I thought how different things are in the uppers as opposed to the down.
What do you mean?
Because basically before it was like, for Juliette, they're like, this is your shadow.
Oh, yeah.
But in the mids and the uppers, they have interviews.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Perspective. There's no such thing as perspective down below. It's like, here's your job, like it, and eat your cockroach cake.
Now, Juliette, she was told as she left the Kennedy place, she's like, somebody, some stranger on the seat's like, you're looking for Kennedy. Why would you be looking here? She goes, finds him. He's putting up decorations. Maybe he had put up Freedom Day decorations. Now he's got to put up decorations for this race to the top up the stairwell. She asks him, hey, last week you said Marnes was dumb twice, like he did two dumb things. What was the second reason that he was dumb? And, through context later, you realize, oh, you're going to my old house. That's why you were dumb. Love this. This is so smart how they put this together.
Bubba, I had a little PTSD in this section.
Oh, how?
Because the guys put up the blockers
right
there. And I had a flashback to Home Depot, and I'm like, man, I was just going to shop down that aisle. How long is it going to be closed?
That does look like those things.
Just go get a screw, please.
Why did they put those up at Home Depot? For restocking? What did they do? Yeah, you're right. They look just like those things.
They do it because they're driving around their little forklift, and they don't want anyone to get hurt.
Paul goes back to Juliette, and he's honest with her. This may be another thing where you think, well, is Paul Billings really bad? But he's honest with her. He's like, hey, I went to see what Judicial was up to. Wanted to find out what they knew. Judicial apparently has spies. Juliette calls them listeners rather than spies. And Paul's like, no. Those are the friends of the silo. Hey, what did you think about this, Qatfish? And what do you think about these friends suggesting this patsy called Ralph Melby?
I was trying to figure this out. The friends of the silo, are they... This is like spies? This is like the French during World War II? What?
Well, maybe, we always use Game of Thrones reference, and listeners, we're doing it because it's like one of the most popular shows on earth, so maybe people know the reference, but maybe he would call these the little bird spies around King's Landing. Yeah,
spies for Judicial. Juliette, she is not effing buying this for 1 second. This is smart.
Yeah. Juliette has a plan. She tells Sandy, get me an arrest warrant for Patrick Kennedy. And by saying this, it's like, wait a minute. She's about to arrest our Patsy. Go arrest our Patsy. And she had a plan. And when she busted she busted Trumbull trying to go in, I wrote this down. This is so good. She's so good. She's like, I only know this isn't Kennedy's place because Marnes and I came here yesterday. I guess everyone makes mistakes, right? Yours was planting evidence in the wrong apartment. Oh snap! Ice cold, hell yeah, Juliette. And then Qatfish, it's TJ Hooker. We got a cop chasing a perp. This is great.
I love it. Bubba, this is it. But now all you have to do when you realize this is to say to yourself, I'm going to completely ignore the coincidence that Marnes that Patrick Kennedy walked by his old apartment when Marnes and Juliette were there to interrogate him.
Yeah, last week. But, I walk by my old place occasionally. But I don't live in a tiny silo where there's only so many places you
Oh, my God. And so Doug is like, throws Juliette over the edge. It is so amazing. And then Juliette commits the number one crime that leads to cleaning. She throws something. She throws something down the center of the silo.
It down, Qatfish. She dropped it down the center of the silo.
You say, listen. It went down.
How come it goes all the way to the bottom? You can't ever get a lucky break where it lands on a stairwell or something.
They were just fixing the fan that George fell on, and now that thing came down and broke it all over again.
Aren't people racing these stairs? It was like, it took people a while to notice, hey, there's a woman hanging over there from the edge of this thing.
I don't know what those people are watching, because presumably people are racing up the stairs, but no one is... They're only 2 levels below, and no one is racing by Juliette and Doug.
Maybe if it's the equivalent of a horse race, you only watch the horses in the front or the ones coming. You don't look Okay,
Oh,
it doesn't.
I see. They're there to watch. They're there to watch the 50-year-olds doing a marathon, race walking. They're like, yay! Here comes Uncle Bob. Yay,
How about
go
this?
Uncle.
Juliette is saved, not thankful, but she's saved. She talks to Paul Billings again, and I don't know why she talks to him so much, since once again, he could be a stooge for Judicial. But Paul says, hey, I'm going to get an arrest warrant for Doug Trumbull. Doug maybe realizes he's in deep doo. Where do you go? You go to find Sims. And he has been shadowing, maybe without Sims realizing how much he's been shadowing. And he goes to this door labeled janitorial. Dun, dun, dun. What is this shadowy area of the silo we found ourselves in, Qatfish?
Now, Bubba, I believe this is called the Down Dirty.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Sims, do you have any idea what's behind that door? Doug Turnbull. No. Sims. Good. Oh, not good at all. Now, I said that, this isn't at all from the books, but you could tell Doug was about to be cleaned up by this janitor, if you know what I mean. Did you realize that Doug was not long for this world, Qatfish?
I thought Common does a good job here because he's like, we all make mistakes. And I actually believed him. I was just as dumb as Doug was.
Well, Sims had his verbal flashback. He's talking, my dad was a janitor, and you think he's just a janitor, but that dad janitor got my bully's family sent somewhere else. Youch.
So, Bubba, does this mean that this is what Judicial does? They have all their official people, and then they have their friends of the silo who gather information at all levels. And what he's saying was, Sims is saying, essentially, my dad was a friend of the silo and exposed me to the secret world.
Possibly. Once again, I'd have to assume that you're right, or it's something like this. I don't have a book insight that I can truly give here. But I want to know to you, if you had to guess, what's so special behind that janitor's door?
HDTV.
Man, that'd be nice. That'd be so good. Hundreds of channels, live sports. Now, Qatfish, one thing that I really do want your opinion on, we got this debate, like Sims is telling Doug Trumbull, and maybe he's just blowing smoke, but he's like, listen, the work we do behind that door keeps 10,000 people alive. And Juliette, she's in the Down Deep group, and they're like, hey, in mechanical, we keep everybody alive. Maybe the sheriff's people like Marnes and Holston, they're like, you know what? We keep everybody in the silo safe. We keep them alive.
And Bernard is like, if I wasn't crunching these numbers, you all would die of uncrunched. You know what? Uncrunched numbers gives you gas. People die of gas.
If I don't finish all the bottles in this office, people. So do you believe Sims is Sims gaslighting Doug Trumbull, or is he honest that he thinks whatever I'm doing, and this is obviously shadowy stuff, it's not just Marnes' death, it's the mayor's death. They even talk that it's George's death that somehow Doug messed up. Is Sims gaslighting him, or does Sims believe this evil he's doing is for the greater good?
I think he's doing it for the greater good. Just if you think of like the FBI infiltrating the Black Panthers, this kind of stuff where they think that they are stopping an uprising and keeping the status quo. So this is probably what he thinks Judicial does, is basically, just as we saw in the first episode, let's say your doctor made a mistake and allowed the wrong type of person to be born. Well, they get up, they grow old, and they become a troublemaker. Well, what do you do now? Well, the doctor can't do anything now, so Dr. Common comes in and takes care of business. Sims says, Doug screwed up with George. You made two big mistakes, but I've made mistakes too.
Yep.
Sims is like, I'm Doug, I'm going to make you my shadow. And Bubba, as I'm watching this, I'm jealous.
Jealous?
Yeah, because Doug can mess up all he wants as long as he shows dedication, and that doesn't happen with you and me. I mess up and you give me a hard time right away. So I'm thinking maybe I should podcast with Sims.
Hold on. Yeah, Double M Matt Murdock. You ready to replace the person who we're going to send out for the cleaning?
Horrible. But then I had second thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
As Doug went over the side, I thought, Bubba's not so bad after all.
Hey, let's get to it. We talked about what do you feel about Paul Billings.
Yeah.
We finally meet Judge Meadows. Juliette has to report to the judge. Hey, Judge, this guy, Doug, he's responsible for these deaths. In fact, he had a suicide note, but is it really a suicide note? We thought he was going to plan it on Patrick Kennedy. As Juliette's kind of figured all this out, the one thing she hasn't figured out is a motive. And the judge, I guess, doesn't care.
You've had some amazing rants on this show, and I have had 0 rants. There's stuff I haven't liked, but I've been whatever. This is it. This is my rant, Bubba.
Oh, let's hear it.
Judge Meadows says, well, this should quell the rumors and conspiracy theories. And I'm like, okay, let me get this straight. You're going to tell us that a member, he's been a member, 7 years, 9 years? Hey, everybody, a member of the jackboot judicial squad that you're all afraid of killed the mayor and the deputy. So I'm sure you're all going to remain completely calm, and this is going to reassure you. Bubba, what the hell? If she had said we got to find a patsy for this because judicial can't be blamed, I'm completely fine. But you're going to say, oh, yeah, this guy with judicial, well, I guess he was a bad apple. When everyone thinks all of judicial's a bad apple, and then they're obviously going to assume that judicial was behind it. This completely makes 0 sense. The entire silo should rise up as one against judicial when they hear this news. This is crazy.
Okay, listen, I'm completely with you. Forget her lack of logic, but we've been hearing about Judge Meadows, and she's almost been set up as this big bad this whole time. Did the character live up to the hype? What do you think about Judge Meadows?
Unless they had resuscitated or done a deep AI fake of Orson Welles, there's no way it could have lived up to my... Once again, I'm like, how could this person be younger than me until I realized everyone is younger than me? But Bubba...
Yeah.
I couldn't judge it. I was too. I was like,
too
this
ranty.
Idiot. This makes it. Oh.
Well, let's
side myself. I'm
let's
knocking
go
down
bit
this
further.
episode to another point.
Obviously, Sims knows about these crimes.
Yeah.
And Sims is behind maybe all of these crimes.
Yeah, he's behind them all, and then he got rid of the evidence.
Is the judge part of it, or is Sims playing the judge? What do you think?
I think the judge is part of it.
Okay. Listeners, what do you think? Is Judge Meadows just as corrupt as Sims? At PHQ on Twitter and Instagram.
It's not corrupt is not the right word. Corrupt means someone's not doing what they're supposed to do. I think judicial's doing exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, tamping down any threat to the order. Okay, but once
I don't even know why. But let's go back a second, because I was so enraged by what happened over here. It was kind of like a hide the ball. What were Johns and Marnes going to do that was so disruptive to the order? The only thing that they could have done that was so disruptive to the order was to make Juliette sheriff.
I guess Johns mainly was going to not listen to what they said.
But what I'm saying is happened already.
Listen, that's true. But if the pact subtly says, like temporary Mayor Bernard says, kiss judicial's butt, and the mayor, remember, she went down to see Juliette and didn't even stop at judicial to say, hey, I'm doing this. Maybe even just that little rebellion in judicial's eyes made them do it. I can't think what else. And then Marnes, maybe because they're worried Marnes might actually find out what happened to the
I get Marnes, because Marnes was going to keep on digging. But Juliette is a new sheriff. What's going to cause less trouble in the silo? Killing a new sheriff that nobody knows, or killing a mayor that everybody loves? So the logic still doesn't hold true to me. But also, it doesn't seem like Judge Meadows has any intelligence whatsoever if she thinks this is going to be great. We're going to try to cover up Marnes' death, but also everyone, this will quell it. This is great.
Well, okay, let's talk about how the show is obviously trying to make Juliette all alone. She moved up top. She didn't have anybody up top. She felt like she was coming to an understanding with Marnes. He's got to die. she and Secretary Sandy are not exactly friends, but they've kind of come to an understanding that's not completely adversarial. We got to get rid of her. Now, this does seem to be Sandy's choice. She's resigning.
Oh, no, she says, I'm asking. And Juliette says, because of me. And in a cut line, Sandy says, that's only a small 95% of the reason.
But Sandy is at least, once again, kind of telling, but at least demonstrating how people may feel in the silo and how they may rebel and rise up, like that infamous rebellion all those years ago. She feels like she's being watched. She doesn't know by who. Who are the they? Who are the they? You would assume, obviously, even you would think, Sandy, wouldn't you think the judicial is probably the most likely they, since they have these goons, as we keep referring them to. But she's like, I'm going to be closer to my family. See ya.
Yeah.
On the way out, she pulls a catfish and says, by the way, Juliette, I still don't like you.
Yeah, neither do I. I don't like her either.
Catfish, come on.
But she calls her sheriff, so she finally respects her.
Juliette actually hangs out with Bernard. I keep saying these are two prickly, weird people. But maybe if Juliette doesn't dive into peer pressure, she won't ever be with Bernard. Because Bernard he's on his own time. He's like, okay, you know what? The race didn't really work, mainly because there was an attempted murder during the race. That could have been it. He's like, let's give him a forgiveness holiday.
Let's purge it up. You know what he should say? He should say is, suddenly we have a lot less food in the silo, so we need some people to get bumped off.
Terrible. But Bernard, why do you think he suddenly says, he stopped Sims from attacking Juliette earlier. In this scene, he's like, okay, I was wrong about you. I didn't want you to be sheriff. Maybe my numbers were wrong. Do you need any help? I can help you. Is Bernard turning? And is Bernard maybe doth protest too much every time he says, I'm not going to be mayor for too much longer? Does he want it? Can you tell? Or is he just so socially awkward? You don't know what to think about this guy.
Well, I can't tell whether he wants it long enough to just finish all the liquor or whether he really wants the power. And I don't know, in the past I've surmised that he wants to consolidate the power between the mayor's office and the sheriff's office. I still don't really, I have no idea what Bernard really wants.
Okay. I'm trying to follow the logic of this. Has she been sheriff 2 days? I've been sheriff 2 days. I'd like 2 days off.
Boom. Isn't that the way this is?
Man, job creator. I love it. Listen, when the power's in the worker's hands, you can work 2 days and then get 2 days off. Awesome. Now, before she heads back down to the down deep, we got to have another scene with this guy in the cafeteria. He's here for some reason on this show. It's Lucas. He seems to be mapping the stars.
You mean Copernicus? I may not have come up with Silo Ren, but Copernicus.
Oh, my goodness gracious. But hey, this is an eye-opener.
Yeah.
The rebels deleted a lot of history. Did they delete the science books? These people don't know about stars, Catfish?
No.
What's going on here?
No.
They don't even know the word stars.
I'm surprised they even allow them to look at the stars.
Well, he's seemingly mapping them. Is that what you'd say?
Or that you can see, or that you could even see the stars through all the radioactive fallout or whatever kind of fallout it is.
Well, Lucas, once again, we've just had a very few brief scenes with him. He's like, oh, yeah, you don't know about this stuff, Juliette? We'll just add it to the list of stuff we don't know anything about. Man, these guys are, I guess, as smart as you could be if you're raised in the silo, but that education system, not good.
No, so I don't know what's, but I don't know what's going to happen in the future with Copernicus, but he might be the new George. At least he's questing for information.
That's true.
So Juliette, she's like, all right, enough at flirting and learning about new things. It's time to go down, down, down. So, of course, she goes down to the place. And you know what? This is the power of being the sheriff, right? Usually before she goes down to get her therapy, she has to bring a fake broken toaster and pretend to pay for the toaster pretend to pay. Now she doesn't have to pretend anymore. She doesn't want to talk about what's going on.
No.
Walker talks about how crazy everything is. She reminds once again, Juliette, you need to learn the pact, you idiot. There's no lifts.
No
pulleys, and no magnification.
Like, you can't have that great of a camera, right? You got to have a low res, probably not even HD camera, apparently. Why do you think that is, Qatfish? We should point out that Walker tells Juliette, your mom built the equivalent of some almost magnifying or telescope. And to me, I'm thinking, does this mean Sims and Doug Trumbull and Judicial killed her mom because she built a telescope or a magnifying
Ooh, that would be
microscope? What do you
good.
think?
That would be good. Well, Bubba, I'm going to save that for a little bit later. But we learn that Juliette's plan is to trick Bernard and Judicial into letting her look into George's death. Because if there's anything we know, Juliette's got good people skills, and she's smarter than Bernard and Judicial. Well, she's clearly smarter than the head of Judicial, who really has got some flaws in her logical reasoning.
She does.
But Juliette, we're near the end of the episode, so of course, Bubba, we have to find something that's going to seem like it's really, really exciting and give us answers so that we can so next episode, there'll be nothing we really learn about it. So, Bubba, we find the Pez dispenser. Oh, my God. What a cliffhanger, Bubba.
This is a terrible cliffhanger. This is terrible.
I want to go right into episode 6, Bubba. Oh, my God. The Pez dispenser, Bubba. That's
how I'll trick them into letting me look into George's death. And so, okay, she has a plan. That's great. But we're seeing this Pez dispenser like, ooh, look at this. Wow. You're right. These are terrible This is worse than climbing down a rope. And then next week, I'll just climb up the rope.
Next week. Oh. You know what? At least, Bubba, this cliffhanger, you know what would be great? This is the worst of all the cliffhangers, the Pez dispenser. What would be great is if actually we learned something from the Pez dispenser, because we haven't learned anything from any of the previous cliffhangers. This would be great if it actually did something.
We're going to get a magnifying glass and look at that Pez dispenser, and it's going to tell us which candy company ran Pez. We'll know. So that's the episode. You were higher on it than I was. I went 7 out of 10. I talked about it more
and more and went on my rant, I got less happy about it.
Oh, no. Okay, no. Listeners,
that happens.
Go down in those YouTube comments, type, and let us know what you think. If you're listening to this on the audio podcast, reach out. There's also our email address, hello@doublepmedia.com. We want to talk to you. We are halfway through. We're going to go to the end of June 2023 with this show. So get ready. Ooh.
I love it. Bubba, so here it is. It is time for our second judicial debate. And this is why I wanted to wait, Bubba. This is where I want to ask you, what do you think? Speculate on the reasons behind no elevators or pulleys and no magnification. I've got a couple of ideas. Have no idea if I'm right, but if you want to speculate on those, if you can do it in a non-book knowledge way.
Okay, well, the first thing, and I'm going to do it just by the show. If you don't want anybody going outside, and maybe there are tools or heavy things in machinery down low that could allow people to kind of break out and get outside. Maybe you don't want an elevator because they could lift those tools. They could lift a jackhammer. I don't know what they have in mechanical, but maybe if you don't want anybody to go outside carrying a jackhammer or anything up 144 floors, that's near impossible. Where maybe if they had an elevator or a pulley system, they could do it while everybody's sleeping and then cause trouble. That was kind of the first thing that came to mind. What do you think?
This is my idea. I mean, obviously, there's no evidence that there was stuff there earlier, that there was elevators there earlier. But my thought
you would have found it, I think,
right. But my thought is that just like they don't allow people to have radios or communicate with each other, and you assume there's not a lot of commingling, that allowed commingling before, and people were allowed to talk to each other and share their feelings of being upset with how they're being ruled. And so the more communication between people, the more intermingling between people they thought was a cause for the uprising. So I could see making it difficult for people to interact with each other would keep them in kind of their own bubbles. I mean, could it have the opposite effect? But at least you could theorize on that. The only thing about magnification, that one I don't kind of understand. Inside, it could be an outside thing. Maybe they think if there's magnification, people will look through the windows or use magnification through the portals to see something they don't want people to see.
Right, but they're not really windows. But is there, because they are video screens, right? But if there's a magnification, like, is there something hidden in the pixels of the video screen? It's tricky.
All right. Well, Bubba, we've got one last thing we do, as always.
Yes.
And we've got to go to the section I like to call the double E's.
Okay, you've stumped me this time. Double E.
Yeah, Qatfish Questions. All right, Bubba. People on this show love telling Juliette that they think she's completely out of her depth.
They do.
Is there anything you want to say about the writers of this show? And remember, they're on strike right now, so be gentle.
I'll say it in the book talk section. I won't say it here.
Okay.
Oh, well, how about this? I'm not sure they've had a great cliffhanger on any episode.
No.
And I think that in the streaming world, you mentioned it, Qatfish, you got to do, there's so many shows out there. You got to get them to click next episode. And so I think on writing great cliffhangers, I don't think they're doing a great job. So I'd say that to the writers.
I would agree with you. Also, there's some reveals they could have done that they have held back for some reason that would have gotten people like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Not necessarily a cliffhanger, but something that makes people go, oh my God, I can't wait to watch what's next. All right, Bubba. Here's what, these double E's Qatfish Questions have gone into a little bit of story time. We're coming up on our 10th year at Double PHQ, and people are all the time are like, Bubba Qatfish, we need to know more about you. So this is what we're doing here. Juliette tossed something down the silo, but it wasn't really her fault. What is your best, funniest story about getting in trouble for something that wasn't really your fault?
Okay, so I am in my family, I'm the third, meaning my grandfather had the name, my dad had the name, I have the exact same name. 6 months ago, I got pulled over in I'm like, why am I getting pulled over? The cop's like, let me see your license and, registration, all that stuff. I'm sitting in my car quite a long time, like, what is this person doing? Then the cop comes up to me and the cop goes, do you live in Roswell? And I go, no, my dad lives in Roswell. And she's like, does your dad have the same name you do? And I go, yeah. And she goes, yeah, your dad's driver's license is expired. And I went, oh. So she was doing a routine check on people. I guess somehow, she gets my name and somehow it's linked to my dad who has the exact same name and his license is expired. So that's not the greatest responsibility, but I definitely did nothing wrong on my end. My license is not expired. Take that, Fulton County cops.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you got? You got to have something better than that story. That wasn't a very good story.
I was just a real nerd loser in all through high school. And when I lived on the East Coast, I went to a school with it was kind of a lower income area. And it was not like when I moved to Hawaii in 10th grade and I went to school where there were more smarter people than I was and were more focused on academics, then I really didn't get hassled. But so I was a super nerd. And one time we were having one of those can drives and it was like, the home room, they got the most cans, you'd get pizza or whatever.
Hell yeah.
So I'm on the school bus and my bag with the cans in it breaks and some of the cans roll down the aisle. So I stand up and I'm like, hey, so my cans roll down the aisle. Can someone hand me my cans? Okay. 2 days later, after my dad comes home from work, my dad and my mom sit me down and they're like, look, you have to tell us why you did this. You got written up on the bus for rolling cans down the aisle. Whoa. And you can't take the bus for a week.
Whoa.
Because of you rolling cans down the aisle.
Oh my God. I thought Juliette was bad, but you're worse. You evil bastard.
I'm a malicious can roller. Bubba, that's how I get off. Rolling cans down the floor of buses, trying to cause trouble.
Holy smoke.
Yeah, troublemaker. All right, Bubba. Well, tell us your story. We want to hear your story when you got in trouble for something that wasn't your fault, so we can feature on next week's episode of Feedback, which thankfully, Bubba, we are now here for. We got some great
We're going to be judicial, getting you justice for the thing that you got blamed for that wasn't your fault. Hell yeah.
For me.
Qatfish, we got a couple new iTunes reviews. Listeners, if you can be kind and give us a review on the podcast app of your choice. These are from Apple Podcasts, but we love them from anywhere, and they help us out so much. If you subscribe and like this on YouTube, it helps so much. Qatfish, here in the United States, Apple Podcast Store, Somebody with the user handle NPD is tremendous. Gave us a 5-star review.
Heck yeah.
Title of the review is The Best Silo Podcast. They wrote, "This is the best Silo podcast that I'm aware of." Oh, well, they added to that qualifier. That's good. Each episode of this podcast is funny, well-organized, insightful, and well-edited and produced. Man, thank you so much.
Oh, man. Yes, thank you. I do so much work editing and producing this. Bubba.
Yeah.
We have international reach.
Oh, we love it.
This is amazing. From India, we got a review from India from a user named Alps **. Also tremendous. Bubba and Qatfish are the best.
Ooh, thank you, Alps.
This
5
reviewer
stars.
goes on to say, ever since the days of the Joffrey podcast, I've been following all the show that these two decide to podcast about.
Man.
Listen to them if you have a sense of humor and appreciate one, and if you want an honest, if slightly irreverent view of things. 5-star and more always. Alps, thank you so much for reaching out to us. That is awesome.
Man, we love your feedback. We love these reviews. Constructive criticism, we love that as well.
Love it.
Give us those podcast reviews or your thoughts like these people did on Twitter. Now, somebody who has the user handle avocado 99201296. I hope this isn't a bot, but they said about Silo, they said, Silo is a top show except for the woke elements. Qatfish, I got to be honest.
Are they talking about the show or are they talking about us?
No, they are talking about the show Silo. I apologize, Twitter user Avocado. I really see woke, and I think, it's just a buzzword that doesn't really have any meaning anymore. But hey, I'm glad you're liking the show, even if there's some element that I guess you don't like. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Avocado. And just a reminder, your name might be Ava. That's what I'm going to say. Your name is Ava because it is spelled Avacado. So I assume it's a pun on avocado.
Oh,
our old loyal listener, our longtime loyal listener, let me be clear about that, because no one is older than I am. Dooley's Left Legs says, I'm halfway through this episode already. Good episode up to now. Totally invested in the show. I'm liking the twist too. Dooley is such a loyal listener that, Bubba, when you put out a tweet from the double PHQ, that's at double PHQ hashtag, asking listeners what they're thinking about the show, Dooley responds right away, even though he's still halfway through the show. That's the power of the double PHQ hashtag. Listeners feel impelled to answer right away.
We love it. A loyal listener, Laura, who's at Mazocat on Twitter, wrote, I was a power plant operator for several years.
Yes.
This is incredible, Laura. We love it. She wrote, it seems a lifetime ago. And Laura continues, so I loved the episode 3 turbine generator action. It served to build Juliette's character, and now I like her even more. Deputy Marnes is definitely having a bad day. Well, this
not
episode,
having any more.
Yeah, no more bad days for him. She said episode 4 was a good episode to move the plot forward, even though it was fairly sedate after the tension of the generator in episode 3. Thank you, Laura. Well, I love people who love this show, and Laura, we always reveal our history here. Laura, the power plant operator, hell yeah.
Thank you, Laura. We love that. And Camille Harley at Harley Camille, always checking in with us too. I love it. Said, I quit reading the book for now so that I would stop comparing them. I like this episode building mystery and intrigue. The end was a definite cliffhanger. It was, but was it a good cliffhanger?
We are glad you like it. On YouTube, we get so many comments. Somebody who has really been giving us some good comments on several of our YouTube podcasts so far.
Yep.
ID Forever wrote, on episode 3 and your podcast, you guys put out a great video and it's a fun episode. They thought that episode 3 was mostly a setup to show us how Juliette, her tics and how the show can crank up the suspense for fun. ID Forever writes, I think the non-book readers might be disappointed if they're looking for more mystery box clues, though. Ooh, keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
Oh, our old friend Peter Conley says Marnes is the hashtag worst.
Oh, no.
He was second in charge for ages. Then he gets his chance and he says, nope, I'm retiring. I was really looking forward to the show, but overall, I'm finding it a bit disappointing so far. I think it's because some parts seem stretched out while other parts, which are just as important, are rushed through. In episode 3, there was a crowd all excited because the mayor turned up, but there've been so many people walk past her on the stairs without even acknowledging who she was. Kind of weird. But I will keep watching. Love your podcast, of course. Always pointing out the things I didn't notice, LOL. Thank you, Peter.
Now, this is a fun one. On YouTube, user with the handle Duran wrote, "Tell us the final ends of the books. We don't have time to read or watch. Seriously, you write spoilers on your videos, but you don't have many spoilers." Oh, I'm sorry, Duran.
Oh, man.
Duran, the answers are out there. You can Google and get, I'm sure, all the spoilers you want.
The truth is out there. Tim Retro's Corner said, I understand where you're coming from regarding the gut punches, and I kind of agree. But also I think the show is its own thing. Just by the nature of the medium, pacing is different, and things that work for one might not work for the other. But yeah, to me, episode 4 was, we're only in season 1, episode 4, and already we're getting a flashback episode?
Thank you so much, Tim. Now, I can't pronounce this next user's name, Qatfish.
It's Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil. The Tree of Life. Yggdrasil.
42. They wrote, I don't mind seeing some backstory on Juliette's youth and fleshing out the silo a bit more, but it's like recycle.
This next one, Bubba, they're talking about you, so you have to read this user's name.
Right. Well, this next person, who I can't even pronounce it, it's YVNGKXNG.
Evinkasing.
Right. They wrote a feedback with spoilers in it. So I ripped out the spoilers and just said that this is somebody who we have on some of our podcasts have spoiler sections. And we say, hey, don't listen if you don't want to know spoilers. Well, this person hadn't read the books, watched a spoiler section, and they got spoiled by listening to our spoiler section. But they wanted us to know that based on the show, they thought something else was the truth when, according to the books, they were wrong, and the truth that they found out they wouldn't have guessed. So that's interesting to say. I guess
they need to tell Duran. They need to tell Duran they were spoiled. Duran's like, there's no spoilers. And even King was like, you spoiled me. You crushed it.
Okay, now, once again, we're going to go into book talk. There's no spoilers, I promise, for future story points. There might be some spoilers for how the show and the book compare. So if you want to hop out now, please subscribe and join us on our podcast recapping episode 6, which is titled The Relic. During her investigation, Juliette uncovers disturbing secrets about someone she thought she knew.
Ooh.
So that's the next podcast.